Hello, I'm Joel Blackford with Beth, Chesed, Sabbath Fellowship. The building is closed, as it's been for 2 years. You could call if you wanted to. You see the number there. We do the philosophy of eschatology, what you need to know, our reality, our existence. We are keeping a different Yom Kippur. So I'm recording on the preparation day before Yom Kippur right now. And so I'm kind of thankful that the fellowship isn't open right now because I'd have to be on the calculated calendar. So instead, I can do what is biblically correct. Now, I'm pleased if anybody keeps Yom Kippur or any of the Moedim, the festivals of God, that are highlighted in Leviticus 23. But for me, because there is no fellowship running right now and it's all virtual, I can keep whatever day I want to keep, and I want to keep the calculated calendar. So there you go. Try not to be disparate. We're Beth Chesed Sabbath Fellowship. We're doing lunar cycles. We're seeing if they drive market crashes, if there's any patterns there. Aaron Brickman is saying this fall. Well, why? And what am I saying? So, and keep in mind, I'm not giving you financial advice. I'm giving you prophetic advice. I'm saying this is biblically what's going on. This is prophetically what's going on, and this is Aaron Brickman. Okay, and he's on the left-hand side. He was on the Hagman report, and also he was on with Mike Adams in the last few days here. Actually, he was on Hagman back on August 25th, but I didn't catch the report until just recently. So anyway, he's saying that there is a certain time, 13 days of misery, that will be in October 2022, and I'll give you the dates in a little bit. You'll have to stick with me for a few slides to get to that. The main thing is that he's saying it's going to be a horrific time. All crashes have the same lunar signature, which is interesting, okay? Every crash is triggered by a full moon, plus or minus a few days, usually 3 to 4 days, 2 to 3 maybe, within 6 weeks of a solar eclipse, and the next one is due October 25th. So we have a solar eclipse on October 25th, which is in his time frame, okay? And he's saying the end of the month, which would be Tishri 27, and I'll try to show you. Well, here it is. Okay, October 21st is Tishri 27 on the cal. So basically, this is Hebcal date converter, and I use this all the time. So that's when he says is that focal point of market crashes. Okay, and but also there's a full moon, a lunar eclipse that's going to occur on election day. So we'll get to that in a little while too. He also cites a Mars-Uranus cycle present in all crashes. This is in this century. It's coincidental, yes, but all of this is coincidental. And what I do in many ways is coincidental. Deal with it. That ends on 27 Tishri again. So every crash bottoms out 2 days before a new moon. Well, when's the new moon? We'll discuss that too. 13 days of misery again in October of 2022. We'll show you the dates. Every fall crash since 1907, 1929, 2008, 1987 have been triggered by the Holy Days lunar calendar, God's calendar. 2022 looks like 1929 in matching imperative criteria. War always begins economically. And this is Aaron Brickman, okay, or Brickman. And so you'll find other sources saying about the same thing. He's not saying anything new. He's pulling together good sources. I appreciate that. Now, he was also on Mike Adams' show, so there's Aaron down there. And so I've got to be careful. I can't cite the links to Hagman. I'm not sure if that's a link that can be shared on most social media. And the same thing with Mike Adams. I don't think I can cite him because it'll get yanked down and I'll get strikes and things like that. But anyway, Aaron Brickman, steep rise before crash. So he predicted that a few days ago. And guess what? On the left-hand side, the market popped back up again, about 900 points in 2 days, 900 per day. And you can see on October 5th, it really, moved back up over 30,000, which is very interesting because I expected it to crash. But I don't understand. It goes up this is 1929 on the right-hand side, and it spiked up, and there were all sorts of signs going on, but then it crashed hard, and it really didn't bottom out until 1932, and then it really didn't recover until about 1959. But at the same time, I was born. Interesting. I was born in 58. But it is interesting that I was part of the high side. So that plus $3 gets you a cup of coffee. So what are we doing? I try very, very hard to give you information that you're not going to hear any other place. I try to give give you some biblical information. I try to give you prophetic information. I try to give you the correct news of what's going on. And I try to have you determine what's going on, and try not to recommend anything. Like, I don't want you to buy stocks or not buy stocks or short stocks or anything like that based on my advice, because I'm very lousy at this. And Aaron also mentioned he's lousy at the ups and downs of the market too. He's good at crashes, which I'm better at that too, I guess. Unfortunately, I know how to grow a business, but I also know how to watch a business fail. So, although I had a little help on that. We do the philosophy of the end of days. And so once again, I'm glad that our building is closed, because then I can celebrate the correct days. Now, that means you're blessed no matter when. And so I have wonderful friends that probably listen to me that are celebrating Yom Kippur as of Tuesday into Wednesday. So it just ended. I'm recording this at 7:30. So it's technically the preparation day now for when Yom Kippur will start for me, which would start, and there you see it, October 7th through the 8th, so through the Friday. So we're going into the 6th pretty quick here, the preparation day, and then into the 7th that evening. Okay, so anyway, so this is from Deborah's Date Tree. She is the wife of Nehemiah Gordon, and she does a nice job. And so my friend again, Joel Brazil, said this. I think this is wonderful. Why wait to observe the sighted moon of Tishri? Because the suspense is part of the process. I think God built the suspense into this. You have to prepare and wait like a bridesmaid waiting for the groom. You need to submit to who is in charge. It teaches you godly patience. So I'm glad that he came up with that. So once again, we are 2 days behind on Tishri 1, on Rosh Hashanah, which is also Yom Teruah. We're 2 days behind, and Aaron is citing that those 13 days will start basically on October 5th and run through the 26th. Okay, those are those 13 days, dreaded days, and those market days to watch. We'll see what happens. Now, keep in mind that the sighted, not sighted moon will for those days of Yom Kippur, and also, so I love the rabbis. I'm very close friends with rabbis, but when they change the dates based on preparation day, which I keep on citing in this video, because I'm going to have to prepare tomorrow. And so if that would have been a Sabbath, or if that would have been, let's say you have to go into Yom Kippur and then you have to prepare for Sabbath, that's a difficult situation for preparation, because I have to have everything ready to go by Thursday night and then stop eating, and I can't make any food. I can't really do anything at all during Yom Kippur, and then I go right into Sabbath. So there's no way I can buy anything or prepare anything. I'm done. So that's the way it works. So this is a problematic year, but it's a good year if you're keeping the actual sighted moon. So then Sukkot would start 2 days later, and Simchat Torah would start, and basically that's from John 7:37 through 39. You would see that festival of water, water libation. That's it. Okay. So once again, the cycles match up on the right-hand side. You can see these Shemitah cycles, but are they actually? I mean, can you see a Jubilee cycle in there? And can I prove my theory, which is that you would have an 1867 Jubilee, a 1917 Jubilee. I mean, there's tons of things that occurred, but is that actually a Jubilee year? Then 1967, then 2017. It's tough for me to prove those things. So anyway, but yet there are patterns. So God set up the patterns in Leviticus 20, well, technically 23 with the Sabbath and things like that. But then also the festivals in Leviticus 23, but then the Jubilee and the Shemitah in Leviticus 25. So, can we abide by this? Well, we have to live under the modern Gregorian calendar, but we also need to be aware of the sighted moon and these days. So let's just watch it. We'll see what Aaron tells us in the future. I'm trying to get an interview with him, or at least a discussion with him. We'll see if I can get that done. So election day, once again, I mentioned November 8th is a whole eclipse, and there are rabbinic commentaries about eclipses, solar and lunar eclipses. So very interesting. Now keep in mind that this lunar eclipse, this blood red moon, is going to be a fulfillment in part of 1 Kings 12 through 16 about Jeroboam and Rehoboam and the big fight between the southern and the northern kingdoms, and how Jeroboam says, and they're not related, but he says, I'm not going to go down south to Judah and participate in the normal festivals. I'm going to set up my own Sukkot. And we're going to, well, he also has his own Yom Kippur, basically, because he sets up not Tishri as his big month, but the next one, Heshvan. So if you were going to start the Great Tribulation, Heshvan's the perfect month. It's a dark month. It's a month that Jeroboam placed as a curse forever. And so keep in mind then, so eclipses never come alone. A solar eclipse always occurs with about 2 weeks before or after a lunar eclipse. So they're tied together. Usually there are 2 eclipses in a row, but other times there are 3 during the same eclipse season. All eclipses from 1900 to 2199. This is the second eclipse of this season. First eclipse of this season is October 25th. As we said, a partial solar eclipse. And so let's look at the days here again. So I give you the Hebcal conversion, which is that the 8th day of November is Cheshvan 14 going into 15. So very interesting. So go ahead and read your Bibles about 1 Kings 12 and the fights between Jeroboam and Rehoboam. And then keep in mind that when I was around in 2012, hanging out at a Messianic fellowship, some guy walked up to me and said, I have a message for the pastor and the elders. And he basically said that the sign of the third seal would open the third horseman. And that opened during the summer, but the Hurricane Sandy is tied to it, and it matched exactly with 1 Kings 12, and another man interpreted it about 6 months later. So just keep that in mind. It's tied to the third seal, which is reaching its fullness right now. It's been around for 10 years, and it's getting pretty ugly out there. Not in America yet. We're about a year behind everybody else, but it's ugly in the rest of the world. So once again, I want to show you one more thing and then make the comment. So there's election day. There's the total lunar eclipse that describes how you'll see it and how it'll match up in the times and things like that. And that, once again, November 8th is election day. And then the rabbi's comments. So this is Sukkah 29a. I grabbed a few comments that are intriguing from the Midrash. And so it is taught in the Baraita that Rabbi Meir says when the heavenly lights, i.e. the sun and the moon, are eclipsed, it is a bad omen for the enemies of the Jewish people, which is a euphemism for the Jewish people, because they are experienced in their beatings. Based on past experience, they assume that any calamity that affects the world is directed at them. So it's a bad omen against the enemies of the Jewish people, but then the enemies are going to come back and smack down the Jews. So anyway, yeah, a child that's accustomed to a beating is expecting another beating, and that's what it's like for the Jews. It's been 2,000 years of beatings, and it's in the Bible, people. Moses, we're going through Deuteronomy right now, and Moses keeps on talking about it, about all the beatings that they're going to get, and the reason why. Because God loves them, and they made a commitment that they would honor his Torah, and they haven't. So another commentary from Sukkah 29a, the sages taught in another Baraita that when the sun is eclipsed, it is a bad omen for the other nations. When the moon is eclipsed, it's a bad omen for the enemies of the Jewish people. This is due to the fact that the Jewish people calculate their calendar primarily based on the moon, and the other nations calculate based on the sun. When the sun is eclipsed in the east, it is a bad omen for the residents of the lands of the east. When it's eclipsed into the west, it's a bad omen for the residents in the land of the west. When it's eclipsed in the middle of the sky, it is a bad omen for the entire world. And according to what I'm seeing, it looks like it's eclipsed over the entire world. Okay, it's in the middle. Okay, this composite picture is just beautiful. It shows the phases of the moon over 28, or technically 29.053 days, and it's in the exact same location over those days. Obviously, you can't see the moon for about a day and a half in the cycle, and that's why we sight off the new moon, and that's a better way for us to sight it. And that is how ancient Israel would have done it. They wouldn't have done it off the conjunction. You can watch last week's video where there's the conjunction issue, and that's rabbinic. And so I would say you have to cite the new moon. It can't be a conjunction. Okay, U.S. election day, partial solar eclipse in Israel. So it's just interesting. So here's the partial solar eclipse, and When the sun is eclipsed, it is a bad omen for the entire world. I think I've got the date wrong there, but there is a partial solar eclipse coming up just before the U.S. election. So the sun is eclipsed. It's a bad omen for the entire world. The Gemara tells the parable. To what is this matter comparable? It is comparable to the king of flesh and blood who prepared a feast for his servants and placed a lantern, a panas, before them. To illuminate the hall, he became angry at them and said to his servant, "Take the lantern from before them and seat them in darkness." So there is this weird thing about partial solar eclipses or solar eclipses in general that's a bad omen for the entire world. Okay, so this will describe the eclipse timeline, October 25th. So once again, it's just before Election Day. And it's interesting because it's tied into Aaron's, Brickman's theory on when the markets will crash. So we'll see. Now, eclipses and pendulums. So this is very interesting. So this is the Elias experiment. And so what he did was he basically Einstein and other people were trying to prove the theory of relativity and that light bends, and you can see it during an eclipse day. So, they proved that out in about 1919, and then in 1954, Elias, whatever, came out and said there's an alternative theory of gravity and magnetism. So by 1954, he conducted a very simple experiment with a pendulum, and he found that the pendulum shifted during the eclipse. So what's this anomaly about? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, why would an eclipse cause the pendulum to literally shift and change the rate of precession? Very odd, okay? And you would assume atmospheric changes, maybe temperature, pressure, humidity. No, it's due to the eclipse. It's really cool. So what I'm getting at is the cosmos affects our weather, it affects our behavior, it affects our moods, lunatics, lunar cycles. I've seen it in business where the service calls were higher during full moons. And I've seen all the strange things. I've seen people walk up to my copiers and shut them down with their bad energy and their electromagnetic pulse that comes from their fingertips. So if moon causes extreme tides, what about more cosmos? If the moon can cause the tides to change so dramatically, what happens when you add other planets in there? What if you add other things in there? Eclipses have a factor too. So basically, you have to agree with me what causes tides. High and low tides are caused by the moon. The moon's gravitational pull generates something called the tidal force. The tidal force causes Earth and its water to bulge out in the side closest to the moon. The side farthest from the moon, the bulges, the water, are high tides. Okay, you know that. So what happens when we add other planets in this? And so this is from SciJinx, and it talks about weather and things like that. But the main thing is you have to concede, even my flat Earth friends, that we have tides, and that it seems to be caused by the moon. And the main thing is we want to cover that now. And also you have to almost concede that there are 7-year cycles. You can see it here in terms of these match up about every 7 years in terms of these cycles that are drops in the market and things like that. So the Shemitah is the last year of the 7-year cycle in the Jewish calendar or in God's calendar. It has several times in the past brought immense financial hardships in the world. The biggest Wall Street crash of 1987 happened during a Shemitah, and so did the bond market carnage of 1994. 9/11 happened a day after the Shemitah in 2001, and Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy with a 777-point fall in 2008. They seem to happen around the Shemitah. So anyway, the main point is that I want you to see that it could be tidal, it could be Shemitah, it could be cosmological. Khan might be an expert on this. Who knows? He doesn't add in the Jubilees. But I will say that at least Khan has a 49th year and a 50th year, and that's a separate year from the next 7-year Shemitah cycle. And I appreciate that. Biltz dumps that next year in the Jubilee year into the first year of the next 7 years, and that's not the way you do it. So this is interesting. This is just a regular guy, Jeff Hirsch, that has noticed these cycles. So he notices a weakness the day after Labor Day, okay, and sell during Rosh Hashanah, and then buy back again on Yom Kippur. So sell Rosh Hashanah, buy Yom Kippur, and he's a guy that just sees the cycles. And if you talk to your Jewish friends about it, they say, "Oh yeah, we've been seeing this for years. This is what we do. We we know it's going to get bad after Labor Day. So, but you have to sell by Rosh Hashanah, and you might as well sell during that time because the markets are going to go up before they crash. Okay, so this guy has been monitoring this. Everybody has a computer system working on this right now. So it's not just one guy. The secular guys, the secular Jews, even the guys that don't believe in God and don't believe in the Bible, they're monitoring it because they're seeing some weird things. Okay, so sell once again on Rosh Hashanah, buy Yom Kippur, and then these patterns. Okay, so these are algorithms, and whether you believe in God or not, they happen. Okay, so this guy, I don't know if he believes in God, but I think he's an expert. So that's Martin Armstrong on economics. He's saying that we have cycles, war cycles, and economic cycles, and that in this particular cycle, he thinks that they pushed Russia far enough that, and the neocons are doing this, and that you're going to get a war cycle. Okay, and they're probably going to use tactical nukes. So that you may think the economy is going to tank, or you might see a panic or things like that, but you also might see the war cycle finally, that somebody will use tactical nukes. So we'll see. He's saying, and I agree with him on this one, that the West has sold out the Ukrainian people and turned them into cannon fodder. So I think this is unfortunate because we didn't need to have this war. There would be a better way to negotiate. Germany and other European countries need Russian oil and gas, and we're going to hurt people this winter. And it's all because we think we can force, through sanctions, we can force Russia to capitulate and Ukraine to win this war. It ain't going to happen. Russia's just too big and powerful, and there's a winter coming, and they always win during winter. So the people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. Yeah, so that's Herman Goring. Horrible, hideous man. There are no peacemakers left anymore in the world. The victims are caught in the middle. So he is a prophet in his own way. Not a godly man that I know of, but he is an expert, no doubt about it. Market crashes. So we're back to Brickman again. So Aaron, coming this fall, economic crash and war. That's two different cycles. Surprising historical indicators known by only a few. And this is Steve Quayle and Aaron Brickman on the Hagman Report, 8/25 of 22. And he comes back and gives another report, but there isn't much information shared there. So we're going to see more centralization of power, greater chasm between the rich and the poor. We're going to see an EU economic crash, an EU a collapse also, a crash and a collapse probably. Stock market crash over here probably at some point in time. He's predicting this year. Banking crash, yes, potentially. Inflation spiking, we're seeing that already. He's predicting a world war, nuclear weapons, bank collapse, and more. As he explains in his interview, markets are on the knife's edge and won't stay in their current range. He predicted a strong market surge today and tomorrow, and it happened. I showed you that. Followed by the potential for a downturn to begin this Wednesday. And it started to turn. It flipped on Wednesday, which was weird. So far today, this is exactly what is unfolding. This may be the last market surge before the unwinding gets underway. Okay, interesting. Continuing on with the article with Brickman and Hagman. So Aaron Brickman returns to an intense discussion about what we might expect next. So it includes the 13 days of misery during the 13 trading days of October 5th to the 21st. We'll see. We'll see. Expect a crash that might rival the crash of 1921 or worse. I'm saying no. I think you're going to see that occur in Europe. I don't think you're going to see it here, but you know what? I'm willing to listen to him. So, and then Mike Adams adds some information on this. Brickman is an expert on market crashes. He's not so good at day trading. Not so good. And I'm lousy. Moon phases directly impact human psychology and emotion. Previous large market crashes have occurred at a repeated lunar cycle. Solar eclipses are also involved in human emotional states. The convergence of certain cosmic events has aligned with historical crashes. The current configuration looks a lot like 1929. Specific dates are given, with windows of opportunity for market crash, discussions of European banks and systematic bank failures, the Great Reset, and why elites want a massive financial collapse, Russia and their nuclear weapons. The escalation will continue. The possible collapse of Western civilization following a financial event. Interesting. So, the globalists want the crash, no doubt about it. They need a crash or collapse to force majeure, to wipe away all their money printing crimes and mass looting of fiat currencies over the last decades. The globalists want to force people into a new digital currency. They're right. Okay, so Brickman says the potential window for this epic crash, once again, during that election cycle, he believes by November 8th, most things are going to be done. I don't know about that, but we'll see. And so he's going to join Mike Adams again in 2 weeks for an update. We'll see. I'd like to talk to him in the meantime. He also cited some stuff, and I don't have the records on it properly because I didn't hear him cite this specifically in the way that I can understand it. But there are 80 and 90-year cycles. So he cited, 1932, then going back 1842, and then 2022. So there are these 45-year bottom periods, and he cites Saturn squaring Venus, or Uranus rather, and it, as I can see on the left-hand side, it is modern astrology. It is, and they're saying that the people that monitor the markets are saying it's astrology, and it really isn't, because God set up all of this. But also, you have to admit to me, whether it's astrology or not, there are tidal forces, and that sways things too, and it can cause mass delusion, so to speak, lunacy. And so just keep in mind, there are 80-year and 90-year cycles for war and economic cycles and other things like that. So it's just very interesting when you start to track this out over hundreds and hundreds of years. There are cycles, people, and they seem to match up with solar and lunar events. And then once again, there's the partial solar on October 25th. So there's a psychology of the market cycle, yeah, but there's also a lunar cycle that matches up with the market cycle. So investing is ruled by two emotions, fear and greed. Yeah, they're right on that. Okay. One other area that's intriguing is electromagnetic discharges affect behavior. So this is unified cycle theory by Stephen Putz, and the fluctuations in the stock market, commodity prices, and economic activity, war, civilizations, global climate, ice ages, geological formations, and the abundance of life on Earth. That it's these cycles may be diverse, but they seem to be ruled by a unified cycle that you can kind of figure it all out eventually. It takes a while, but that this guy seems to make sense that everything happens in maybe. Well, I have a friend that calls it sine wave cycles, and they seem to be sine waves. Literally, you can plot it out on a graph. Okay, and so many of these things can be plotted out. So this is an interesting book. If you want to read it, you can. And then I list on the bottom there again tidal forces. So we do see that these forces do go in tides, okay, up and down. So this is interesting. This was cited by Mike Adams, and basically it's little tiny print, but we're going to show that there was a guy named Christopher Carolyn that's an expert, and he won a Dow Award and everything like that back in 1998. And so for him, there's the annual lunar calendar. The annual lunar calendar used here is based on the Babylonian calendar, which was the model for the later Jewish calendar. I disagree with him, but that's fine. The annual lunar calendar labels the day of the first new moon following the spring equinox. That is Babylonian. We don't do that. We time it off the barley harvest in Aviv. Okay, so then he goes down in 1992. The author demonstrated how the panic days of Black Tuesday, October 29th, and Black Monday, October 19th, 1987, occurred on the same annual lunar calendar date. And so 7/28, the 7th month, 28th day. Additionally, the other similar points in the comparisons of those 2 days, the spring lows, the summer highs, the autumn failure highs, all occurred within 1 day of the lunar calendar. And so it's just interesting. He should have won an award for this. So more on this article. He is an expert, and so he's basically saying these trends make sense. And so there's a causation, there's a correlation between the annual lunar calendar and the timing of three 20th century panics, as well as the supportive data from the 19th century, does not prove that the annual lunar calendar position is the cause of those panics. So, yeah, you can't say that's the cause, but you can say that it kind of matches up with it. So, do people say, oh, the lunar calendar is coming up here and it's the year end and it's Rosh Hashanah? No, they're just investing, but it happens that way. It just time and time and time again, it matches up with Tishri. It just does. Lots of things do, big things. So my personal opinion is that at any given point in time, the best chance to go into the final 7 years is going to be the 17th of Heshvan. And so what month is that? That's the month after Tishri. Okay? And so that's the day of Noah's flood in the Bible. And so it is the 17th day. You have to kind of calculate that Tishri is the beginning of months at the beginning of time, and then it converts over to Aviv with Moses time. But there you go. So November 11th of 2022 would be 17 Cheshvan, and that's coming up in a while. So that would be, so that's real close to election day. It's real close to the full moon. And it's real close to the war cycle. When goods don't cross borders, soldiers will. So that's been my prediction every year, that if we were going to go in, it would be during Heshvan. But it could be Heshvan 1. So according to my calendar on the left-hand side, Yom Kippur of 2029 would be 9/19, and I do show that on the right-hand side that 9/19 is 10 Tishri of 2029 or 5790. But that, if you go back 2,520 days, you get to October 26th of 2022. So if Yom Kippur is the ending day in 2029, so 7 years from now, basically, it would start on October 26th, technically. I'm saying this is not that year. I'm not predicting anything at all. I'm thinking we're a year behind, if not 2 years behind, maybe 3. And so I can't imagine a situation where the world would go bonkers and we could go in by October 26th. I mean, that's just a few days from now. But it is in Aaron Brickman's theory. I mean, it matches in there, okay? And then I wanted to show you in the middle here that this is, it shows that the 10th of October, I mean the 5th day of October of 2022 shows up as 10 Tishri from the calculated calendar. I'm not keeping that particular day. I'm keeping Thursday evening and Friday of this week. But it does show you the days. So different starts, different ends. I just wanted to show that to you. Continuing on, other people are saying that we are going into another cycle. And the cycle, according to Peter Zeihan, and Aaron cited him too, and Elon Musk too, is we don't have enough babies. Okay, so God says be fruitful and multiply. Well, we're not doing that. And so we don't have enough consumers. We don't have enough investors. We don't have enough workers. Everything's going away. So China will fail first. There's no babies, no consumers, no investors, no workers. Okay, and so I just wanted to put the calculation down below. This was the 80-year theory. I don't know why I dropped it in here, but 1776 plus 80 is 1865, basically. Plus 80 is 1945. Plus 80 is basically where we are right now. So it doesn't work out, but I had the space to put it in there because the numbers are not exactly 1776 plus 80. It's close to 1865. Okay, so, but the main thing is we're in the cycle of not enough humanity and too old of humanity. So that's another cycle that's really bad. And that makes countries fail. China will fail horribly. They might drop down to 600,000, not 600,000, 600 million people by 2050. Well, you can't run a society if everybody's over 80 and you only have, six. Well, whatever, it doesn't matter. They're running themselves out of people and out of answers. And Elon Musk, of all people, he's a total globalist, but he says have babies, have lots of babies, and God says that too. So listen to God. Now, to conclude things out, these are prophets. These are wonderful men. I've met Michael Boldea, who's the grandson of Dmitry Duduman on the bottom. I never met Wilkerson, but I met Groover. I sat in Iowa and talked to him at a farmhouse. And so I can technically say I met two of the people, two of the three. Godly men, I can prove that through. So Wilkerson has taken up another role, one after the order of Jeremiah, Joel, and other great doom and gloom sayers of the Bible. He's become a prophet of the apocalypse. A nuclear holocaust is coming, he thunders, and it is headed straight for America. So that is from a Dallas magazine. They call him the prophet of the apocalypse, and nobody loved him after his vision. Because it's a hard message. Well, there are people that don't want to talk to me either. So, because these are hard messages. So, what's the point? I can say that Wilkerson is predicting, a nuclear holocaust is coming. Groover is saying there's going to be an attack against America. And Dudeman, that's not how you spell Dudeman, but anyway, the Russia's going to attack America and China with them too, others. So, where are we? We are in the birth pangs. We seem to be at the fullness of the third seal. We're 10 years into it. We're entering into signs of the fourth seal, which is 4 different plagues. We would go into the fifth seal, which would be a lot of martyrs, tons of martyrs. And then we would go into the silent period, going into the 7 trumpets, and then we might see a market crash before that. I don't know. I don't know how to time it. I'm thinking, based on Wilkerson, that we're a year behind Germany and Japan, if not 2 or 3. So the Great Tribulation happens after that. We're not in any of those. The main thing is clean garments. Clean garments. Starting tomorrow on the sighted moon calendar, we will have Yom Kippur starting, and so it's a good day to repent. Just monitor the day, be aware of what's going on. Get your garments clean, especially going into Yom Kippur. So keep that in mind. Be blessed. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for giving me your time, and be blessed going into Yom Kippur.